Okay guys, let's start talking about cells. Say this is our last topic before we take our test. Okay, now as far as cells go, remember this is going to be my basic unit of life. Okay. Whenever we talk about cells, remember we always draw what first? A cell membrane. So here's my cell membrane. Okay, there we go. And then there's a couple pieces that all cells have to be considered living. Cell membrane first off, because if I get rid of that cell membrane like that, and you just saw the white screen, then you wouldn't know there's a cell there. But as soon as I draw something like this, you're like, oh, okay, that's my cell. So this is my cell membrane. That's the first thing, cell membrane. The second thing that all cells have to have, remember, think back to our characteristics of life. The next thing is they have to have some type of DNA inside, because that's our living organism's way of carrying and transmitting genetic material. So that's our second thing all cells have to have is DNA. The third thing all cells have to have are going to be these little dots that you find everywhere. These are called, that's an R by the way, these are called ribosomes. M-E-S. Now ribosomes are super special because they have one super important job, is that they make, there you go, make proteins. E-I-N-S. And then if you recall, as far as proteins are concerned, proteins are just chains of amino acids. But really, what's important about proteins is what their function is. If you guys remember from the macromolecule unit, proteins, this is what makes up my physical organism, which is ridiculously important. So the DNA right here, this codes for my organism. Then I can send that DNA code to the ribosomes. Ribosomes are going to make my proteins, and then these proteins actually create my physical organism. And then the last thing that all cells are going to have is just all this empty area that's beside the DNA, but that's besides the ribosomes. And this is going to be called my cytoplasm. In my cytoplasm, if you guys think about packages, packages always have those packing peanuts. And the purpose of the packing peanuts inside some type of box is to keep your contents safe and nothing gets damaged while in transit. Well, cells are going to be the exact same way. If your cell is a living organism and it has to interact with your environment, then you need something to cushion all of the really important stuff inside. That's what the cytoplasm does. So he helps cushion those ribosomes. He helps cushion that DNA. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is something called the cell theory. And what the cell theory is, by definition, is that this gives us a definition of life. And there's three parts to your cell theory, okay? The first part of your cell theory is that your cell is the basic unit of life. Everything starts out as a cell. You guys started out as a cell. Bacteria cells start out as a cell. Any living organism starts as one cell. Then, the next part of your cell theory is that all cells are made of one or more. Okay, so when we talk about one or more cells, we're really talking about a couple different things. If I'm only made of one cell, that means I am, that's an N, by the way, that means I am unicellular, versus if I'm made of more than one, that means I'm multicellular, okay? And when we talk about unicellular organisms, Unicellular organisms are the ones that are just one cell big. These are going to be my bacteria. And then any other living cell that's made of more than one, these are my multicellular ones. So this would be perhaps an animal, or it could be a plant, or it could be a fungi. Then your third thing for your cell theory is all cells come from pre-existing cells. So all cells come, what's it come? From pre-existing cells. Okay? And that's not really too far of a stretch of mind. I mean, if you think about you're sitting there, well, you were just the creation after your mom and dad had sex, right? Your mom had an egg cell, your dad had a sperm cell. They united, and now here you are. So you came from other cells, and then your skin cells came from other skin cells, and your heart cells came from other heart cells. Now, since we're starting cells, we need to talk about two really, really important ones, okay? Say we have two cell types that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on some set of cells that are called prokaryotes, and then we're going to look at another type of cell that is called a eukaryote, okay? I drew pictures up on the whiteboard for you of each of them, but I'm going to go through them on here. But you can see that this thing doesn't write crazy well, so you'll have to bear with me just a skosh. So the first type of cell we're going to talk about are these guys, right? This is called a prokaryote. That's an O-T-E. So let's do word roots first. Pro means before. And then karyote means nucleus. Now, we've all had some science where we talked about organelles and stuff, so we need to go back to see what a nucleus does. A nucleus, for today, will be fine. This is going to be the brain of your cell, which means it's your control center. It's what carries out all of the commands for your cell. These prokaryotes, they're before a nucleus. That means they don't have a brain. So these types of cells are super duper simple cells, okay? And my super duper simple cells, that means, well, in addition to, these are going to be one cell big because they're so simple. And my one cells, as we've already said, these are going to be my unicellular. And the only organism, if you think about it, what's the one organism that is only one cell big, and you're going to find it on your skin, you're probably going to find it on the tables, it really exists just about anywhere, but because it's only one cell big, we can't see it. These are going to be my bacteria. Bacteria are only one cell big, and they're super duper simple because they don't have that nucleus inside. They have a couple other characteristics. So besides bacteria cells being one cell big, and these are prokaryotes, their DNA, right? We can talk about it. Their DNA, its shape is important. Its shape is circular. Okay, so if I wanted to draw, a prokaryote cell, that's what it would look like. It's just one cell big, and then its DNA, since there is no nucleus, it's just going to be held in a nucleoid region of your cell, and since it's circular in shape, it'll probably be right here in the middle. So this will be my DNA. Then, just like the cell we drew a little bit ago, you have to have your basic cell components. So, as always, you have to have a cell membrane. Whoops. Because if you don't have a cell membrane, then you're not going to have a cell at all. And then after that, we still have to have my awesome little ribosomes. Okay, so these are ribosomes. Remember, those make my proteins, so these are super important. You're going to have a couple of those in there. Then you're going to have all the jelly stuff. That's your cytoplasm. And then they have a couple other features. Something special about bacteria, since it's only one cell big and it's living in its environment, it has to have kind of another protective layer. That's what this will be. So bacterial cells will have a cell wall, and that's just protection against the environment. It's always going to be on the very, very outside. Like, why would you have your protection in the middle of your cell? You're going to want to have it as the barrier here on the very, very, very outside of your cell. Besides having a cell wall, cell membrane, ribosome, cytoplasm, and DNA, they have a couple other little things. They have hair on them that look like this, so just kind of squiggly lines that surround this guy. Here, let me picture up a bit. They have these nice little squiggly lines, okay? These squiggly lines, these hairs, are called cilia, okay? In cilia, they act a lot like a broom. And what do you guys do with a broom? You sweep things with it. And it's the same idea here, is to keep your cell surface clean. Remember, things are trying to come in and they're trying to leave your cell membrane, because these cells are still going to go through osmosis, diffusion, and facilitate diffusion and active transport. But if you have debris settling on your cell, then things aren't going to be able to get in and out right here. And if things can't get in and out, that's going to be super duper sad for your cell and it's going to die. So you need this cilia, so that way it just kind of goes back and forth. And when it goes back and forth, it's like it's sweeping your cell, and it keeps things from settling on it and from killing it. Then you have another structure. People have seen it before because we've drawn it before, but it's like a little tail, okay? This tail is called a flagella. And you guys have seen it before, because if I draw this cute little guy, you know what that is. That's a sperm cell. Well, what's the purpose of that tail on the sperm? It's to help it swim. So it's the same thing with the flagella right here on my bacterial cell. That flagella is going to help make my bacterial cell modal. That means it's able to move around its environment. Then our next cell type we need to talk about is going to be a eukaryote. So we need to go through word roots here. Eu means new, and karyon is still going to refer to the nucleus. And so what that means is that these eukaryotes, they actually have a nucleus, which means they have a brain to their cell. Eukaryotes, there's actually 3 big types that we want to make sure we cover. These are animals, so that means you are a eukaryote cell. Plants, okay, plants are super complex, and so they have a nucleus. And then my fungi, and if you guys don't know what fungi are like mushrooms. But these 3 right here are all eukaryote organisms. They all have a nucleus, which means since I have compartmentalization within my cell, that means my cells are super duper complex. And you guys know that. You can look at each other and think, okay, that's a complex organism. If you look at a plant, I mean, think about all the leaves and all the branches and all the stems and the flowers and the systems inside. That's a lot of things going on. So you know that that has to be a complex organism. And then fungi, well, the fungi, just take my word for it, they're really, really complex too. So there's a couple notes for our eukaryotes that, okay, they can be either animals, plants, fungi, and they're super complex. Another thing about them is that my eukaryote cells, that's a U, these are going to be Nelly, let's spell that right, huh? These are going to be multicellular organisms, which means they're made of 1 or more cells. And you can, again, look at yourself and think, yes, I'm made of more than 1 cell, and I'm complex. That means I'm a eukaryote. Plants, same difference. Fungi, same difference. As long as I'm made of more than 1 cell, that means I have complexity. And if I have complexity, I have to have a nucleus. I have to have that brain. Something special about their DNA, right? I like to talk about the shape of it. My DNA's shape is linear. really, when we come down to it, if I wanted to draw a cell, so let's just draw a super simple, this is going to be, this can be an animal cell. We'll talk about the differences between animal and plant cells later, next time probably. But my animal cell, my plant cell, well, first off, look at that. I have to have a cell membrane, because if I don't have a cell membrane, I don't get to have a cell at all. And now that we're super duper special, I get to have a nucleus right here in the center. So this is going to be my nucleus. And my nucleus is going to hold my linear DNA. Normally when we see it, it's wrapped up on itself in that double helix. And I think you guys have heard that word before. So there's my DNA. Still, because it's a cell and it's functioning, that means I'm going to have these ribosomes, because that's what every cell has to have, because we have to have protein so I can make my physical organism. And then they're going to have all of these other structures in here that look like this. And if you guys took botany with me, we've covered organelles. You guys have covered them, oh, I don't know, probably in 6th grade. You know, like that could be my mitochondria. This can be my Golgi apparatus. We'll go through them next time. But the fact that I even drew something right here means we have an organelle. Okay, so that's an organelle. That's going to be an organelle. This is an organelle. My nucleus is an organelle. And it's the same idea with my cell membrane, right? If I draw a structure over here, there you go, we'll make this one right here. Because it has that orange line around it, that means it's a structure, right? So if I take that away and I point and I'm like, all right, guys, what do you call this right here? There's nothing there. But as soon as I add something, like let's say I draw another structure looks like this, later on you'll be like, oh, okay, that's the mitochondria because it's bean shaped. All of the stuff inside my eukaryote cell, what makes it special is that all of these organelles right here are all membrane bound. And when we talk about membrane bound organelles, that just means that all of the structures inside my really, really complex cell are surrounded by a membrane. Oops, there you go, membrane. Which, same situation with our cell. If I say, okay, here's my cell right here, you guys know what that is. But as soon as I take it away and I point to that empty spot, you don't know what it is. Same thing up here when we look at all of these different structures that I'm kind of re-highlighting in this pink. As soon as I highlight them in the pink, you guys can see it, right? Which means they have to have a membrane surrounding it in order for you to be able to even notice them within my cell. Okay, so to sum everything up, right? Every living organism is made of a cell. This is my basic unit of life, okay? In order to be a living thing, I have to have a couple different structures. I have to have a cell membrane. I have to have some type of DNA inside my cell that gives me my genetic information. And then I have to have some structures that look like little circles. And those are going to be my ribosomes. Ribosomes, again, something important to note, make proteins, which is what the DNA codes for. So the DNA sends the message to the ribosomes. Ribosomes make the proteins, and then the protein is expressed as my physical organism. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 of all of this stuff is that the cell theory is made of 3 parts. Okay, first thing, that all cells are the basic unit of life. All cells have to be made of 1 or more. And then the third thing is they all come from other cells. And then last but not least, when I look at cells, I have 2 kinds. I can either be a prokaryote or I can be a eukaryote. Pro, easy way to kind of remember stuff. Pro equals no. That means they have no nucleus, and that's why they are super simple. And these types of cells are bacteria. Versus when I look at you do. Okay? Which means you do have a nucleus. And since you have a nucleus, you are seriously complex. And if you are super, super complex, then we're looking at 3 big groups. We're looking at animals, we're looking at plants, and we're going to look at fungi. But regardless of the situation, just remember, all cells have to have these things. So DNA, some ribosomes, and then a cell membrane.